Welcome to A1R Psychic Radio here on Moonstruck TV with Amanda Hall Psychic all the way from the Gold Coast. It's a beautiful winter crisp morning here. I live in a very tropical part of the world, I suppose, a little bit like California in the USA. So for us to sort of talk about it snowing not that far down the road is a once in a lifetime sort of event, and only a couple of hours away from me it is actually snowing. So it is actually quite cool here this morning. But that's okay. It's winter and we expect it to be cold. I want to open the show this week again with a very heavy heart. I mean, it seems to be all too often that I ask everybody to take a little minute out of their busy day and remember people that have been tragically murdered in the last week. And, you know, again, in the US, there was a terrible shooting over the weekend there where, you know, so many people lost their lives and so many people have been hurt. I just can't begin to imagine what these families are now beginning to face as the reality starts to hit home about their loved ones aren't coming home again. Look, I know lots of people around the world have tragedies that, you know, they lose somebody significant or special to them every single day of the week. But I think when someone's life is cut down tragically short by a shooting, I think that sort of really hits home to us that how very, very precious life is. Here in Australia, we're waking up to news this morning that we had our own massacre overnight in the top end of a capital city called Darwin. And it's very rare here in Australia for us to have people do that. So it's big news here. So again, my hearts go out to those sort of families as everybody starts to come to terms with what's happened in the top end here in Australia. So let's kick the show along and let's try and get it back into a positive mode, because I think that's what we're about, is uplifting everybody and making people have something to hang on to, something that can bring some light into their lives in the next 7 days, hopefully. So interestingly enough, the card of the week this week is the Justice card. Now, the Justice card is a fairly ambiguous Major Arcana card, and when I was first working with the tarot, it was one of these cards that I didn't quite know how to explain to people because it had such a legal sort of feel. And, you know, we think of justice and we think of judges and we think of them sitting in their courtrooms bringing down their deliberation, their answers, and supposedly justice. And it was like, how do I fit that into everybody's everyday sort of lives? And this is what I've come up with, and I've been working with close on 40 years, is it's a legal situation or a document. So these are statements I'm making. They're not necessarily saying, is the whole of the card going to affect you this next week? So it could be that you're facing a legal situation or you're receiving a document, which can be anything official. Some people will have an encounter with the police. Hopefully we can minimise that. Finding out the truth in the matters affecting the balance. Now, if we think of what judges do in a courtroom, they take all the facts, they weigh them up, they sift through it all, they find out the BS from the truth, and then they sort of say, this is exactly what my findings are. This is what's caused or created this problem, this situation, and this is my answer. So if you look at it as a little bit like you've got to be like a judge, sift through everything that's coming to you, being presented to you in the next six or 7 days, get rid of the BS, look at what the truth is, look at what the facts are, and then make your decisions accordingly or your judgments accordingly, and you won't go wrong. So that's the card of the week. So let's hopefully we can lighten things up a little bit from here. But it's interesting that when we have a card like the Justice card comes out, it means that we're all going to be facing some sort of decision or needing to sift through something in the next 7 days. So just be aware of that. So astrologically, as we have our little glimpse around the universe this week, I know we're in the Gemini time of the year where things seem to be sort of lots of ideas, lots of things happening very fast. Nobody seems terribly grounded or wanting to deal with anything that's terribly heavy. And we've just come out of the new moon where I know a lot of people were struggling with the new moon this month, saying to me, I don't understand it. Why am I sort of feeling so disorientated? I can't focus. I can't sleep. I can't do this. It's almost like a full moon. Well, yes, the Gemini new moon this year seemed to affect a lot more people than it did, you know, in previous years. But I think that's because we're all becoming a little bit more aware and listening to our inner voice. And that's a good thing, even though you might find it a little bit annoying that it sort of seems to be affecting your life more. Once you learn to work with the rhythm of the moon cycles, you will find that your life becomes a lot easier. So I'd like to not talk about the moon at the moment. I'd like to move on to what's actually happening in the transiting planets around the universe. And this week we've got the major focuses on the planet of communication, Mercury, that we quite often talk about on this show. And thankfully, no, Mercury's not retrograde at the moment. Mercury's just doing his little dance forward in the universe. But he's actually holding hands with the moon. And they're both in the sign of Cancer. Now, anytime we have any planets in the sign of Cancer, it's a time when I think we need to start to look at the emotional areas of our life. It's a time when we sort of want to sort of hibernate a little bit from the world. We want to sort of take a step out of our busy day-to-day sort of stuff and say, let me just be. Let me sort of sit on the couch for a while and contemplate my navel, or just have a cuppa and relax and sort of just let my thoughts come in and out like the flow of the water at the beach, you know, the ebb and flow of the tide. So it's no surprise when we've got Mercury, the planet of communication, holding hands or conjunct with the moon, that our attentions are certainly turning to. It might be that time to have that deep and meaningful conversation with a loved one. It's time to express to the world how I feel. Now, we're going to try and do it in a very gentle, sort of safe, secure way, because we're in Cancer. It's in Cancer, so it's sort of wanting to be sort of gentle, motherly, maternal, sort of deliver the message in a way that's non-threatening, that, you know, it's a very gentle sort of process. Now, we have to also be aware that we've got what's known as a very wide aspect, and it means we're still feeling the effects of it, but it's not as intense as Mercury holding hands with the moon. We have a wide aspect to Mars, which is also in Cancer. Now, Mars could just very well be that trigger point. Mars is the planet of action. So Mars could be the thing that says, come on, now's the time to have that conversation. What are you waiting for? You've put it off too long. We've got to get moving with this. We've got to, and then all of a sudden that energy will die down again. You think, oh no, it's not that important now. And we let it slide for another day or two. And then Mars will activate itself again and say, come on, it really is time. So if you do have to have some very difficult conversations, maybe now is the time, and you can approach it in a very gentle, loving, maternal, motherly sort of way, and you'll have a much better result. So that takes me on to the candle of the week this week. And because we're in the Gemini energy, we're obviously going to be working with the sun sign candle of Gemini, which is lovely. So this is a time, if you want to bring some new ideas into your life, if you want to sort of create things coming out of nowhere, you want to motivate yourself to sort of start getting, with the snap of the fingers, ideas happening, now's the time to start writing your list out and putting it underneath your candle. At least 3 things that you want to attract to you that are new. You know, there may be some projects you're working on and you're a little bit stuck for what's the next step. Put that down on your piece of paper and say, look, I've been working on X, Y, Z. I seem to be stuck. Come on, universe, help me out with some innovative new ideas, or break the deadlock for me. Write it out, pop it under your candle, read it out aloud. Burn your candle for about 15 minutes to 2 hours a day, preferably for 7 days, so that we can really get the intent, purpose and direction going. And that, you will find, will sort of help break that deadlock there with that. The extra large candles will burn for about 100 hours if you look after them. So if you haven't got a big amount of space, we do have a little travel kit this week. I've made it up purely with Gemini candles. So you can take this anywhere with you, into the office, on holidays, just, you know, pop it in the bedroom and have this going again while you might be watching your favourite TV show or curling up with a good book. It's always good to try and keep the momentum going as much as you can when you're working with candle energy, sort of then you can really intensify and bring the results to you much faster. Those of you that don't want to work with a candle, each week I sort of talk about this. Melt warmers, pick them up at the local department store, fairly inexpensive. You don't need a flame with these. You just take a couple of teaspoons of the soy wax out of your candle, pop it onto the top of the melt warmer, turn it on, writing your list out, doing the same thing. The difference with a melt warmer is you can leave this going all the time. I mean, preferably turn it off if you leave the house or leave the office, or, you know, you're going to bed, but it's something you don't have to babysit, where I tend to babysit my candles. I don't leave an open flame by itself. So we're moving on to our famous person that we've been featuring each week on the Zodiac, and we're going back around the Zodiac again with famous actors. And this week I'm going to talk about a male actor who's a Taurus. Now, it was very interesting as I started to do my research on who I would actually sort of feature, and I thought, you know, we've featured so many of the younger actors and so many people that are so prominent in today's acting, and you know, they roll off the tongue easily. But I think we also need to pay homage to some of the people that have really set the foundation stones down for where the film industry is today. And one of those would be the one and only Henry Fonda. Now, look, Henry Fonda started his acting career very, very young. He was working in stage productions and things like that during his schooling. He went on to sort of start his illustrious career on Broadway in working on the stage. He was a very, very good stage actor. He was able to project his voice. He was able to sort of really sort of tune into, making the role his own very, very quickly. He went on to have an amazing film and acting career. And I think probably one of the things that Henry Fonda will be probably most remembered for is the way that everybody came in contact with him. It's like he took them under their wing and he became sort of like the father figure to a lot of fledgling actors and giving them advice and sort of in a non-judgmental way, just encouraging them. And that was a precursor to what actually happened in his real life, where he went on to, produce children and grandchildren that followed in his footsteps. So he's one of the really famous acting families, I suppose, of the 20th century. And I don't think there's many people on the planet that wouldn't have seen this film. And if you haven't, I think you should go back and, get it on Netflix or Google it or something like that. It was called On Golden Pond. And it was one of the most amazing films I think I ever saw Henry Fonda in, with Katharine Hepburn. And it was really a very moving story. It's one of those films that you need to watch a couple of times, because each time you watch it, you get a little bit more out of it. But in that, I think we saw the brilliance of his acting, that he made it look seamless, that it didn't look like he was actually acting. And it was just a great storyline, no sex, no violence. It was just a really nice, timeless piece of work that I think will go down in history as one of the great movies of all time. So next week we'll be talking about Good Luck. So why don't you join us next week for that? But we're going to take our first caller, and it's Linda in New Comistown, Ohio. And I'm sure I pronounced that name wrong, Linda, and I do apologise. How are you?
Fine. How are you?
Very well, thank you, sweetie. How can I help you tonight?
Yeah, I was wondering if I could get a tarot card reading.
Yeah, sure, darling. Do you have a particular question you'd like me to work with?
Just like whatever stands out to you, like what's going to be going on, like within this month.
Can you repeat that for me,
in
sweetie?
My life, what's going to be going on in my life.
Okay, what's going to be going on in your life? Okay, no problem. It's interesting, Linda, because the first thing that they're showing me is that you've had to slow down recently. It's like everything in your life has almost had to come to a standstill. And that was very, very necessary, because I feel that there'd been so much that went on for so many years that I feel that you were physically, emotionally, and every other way tired. So it's like the universe said, okay, I'm going to make Linda stand still for a minute while she sort of regathers her energy and, just sort of sits for a minute or two, and then we can start going again. Did you find over the last couple of months that you really didn't have the energy to get up and do anything much, Linda?
Yeah.
And that's because of what I just...
It's hard to do anything.
Yeah. Look, it's not always going to be that way. I think over the coming months, you'll slowly start to regain your energy and your motivation to get up and do new things. But don't try and force that, sweetie. Just go with the flow of what's sort of actually happening. I feel from about August onwards, it's like your year actually starts then. It's like I really start to feel as if I'm getting some traction. Life is starting to go forward again. Has there been some changes to where you're living? Have you sort of done a little bit of redecorating or moved some furniture around or something like that? Because I feel movement around the place of where you're living.
Yeah, I just got my beds moved around the other day.
Mm-hmm. And you feel better for that?
I had that done the other day.
Yeah, good. Yeah, they're just showing me highlights of things that are going on in your life so that you can see that things are actually sort of progressing and changing. I also want to say to you, Linda, it's time now to put yourself number one. You need to be the most important person in your life. It's not a time to be concerned about other people so much. It's about your turn. So has there been a little health issue too that's been concerning you over this last few months?
No, not really. But I have been in a relationship with somebody, and I'm not sure if that's the right relationship to me or not.
Okay. All right. I mean, because they were showing me this little health issue, that may just be connected to your energy levels that I've already spoken about. And this might also be a major part of why they're asking you to slow down so you've got time to think about things, look at the relationship, look at where you want your life going. Are you completely satisfied with things? And they keep coming back to showing me that you've got to put yourself first. Look, I'm not going to say that I feel that necessarily this relationship is wrong as such. I just sort of feel it. Some of the time this person, it's almost like they feel you're invisible, or you feel that you're invisible to them. Like sometimes they just don't even acknowledge that you're there. And that's sort of what is making you question whether or not this relationship's right. It's sort of like we're not necessarily gelling together all the time. I think they've had their own fair share of issues that they've had to deal with in this last 12 to 18 months. So I wouldn't necessarily look at that as a negative. I'd look at it as they've tried to sort of shield you from you being part of what they've been going through. So if they've sort of been a bit distant or pushed you to one side a bit, yes, it's been intentional, but it's been intentional for the right reasons, because they haven't wanted all their troubles to rub off on you. Do you know what I mean? They've sort of been shielding you a little bit from that. Again, I come back to August where things start to blossom again. And I feel that this relationship will start to blossom again too. But I feel this time it goes into a much stronger category than what it was before, where I feel more connected, I feel more comfortable with it, and I finally sort of feel, yes, this is the right relationship for me. But it's taken a while to get there, has it not, Linda?
Yeah.
Yeah, but overall,
I have a court proceeding of trying to get my granddaughter, and I was wondering if you could see anything about that, because right now I'm just waiting on the judge's decision.
It's always a tricky thing when we're going to courts and in courtroom situations when it's when it's connected to our grandchildren. And I mean, obviously you wouldn't have started this in motion if there wasn't a very valid and good reason and the need to feel to protect your granddaughter. And I feel all of that's been sort of taken into consideration with the judge's decision in the way that they're going to hand things down. Look, I strongly feel that you will be awarded your granddaughter, and I think with that comes a certain amount of conditions or ways that things have got to be handled, whether or not that means that, you can only allow so much access to her parents, in the court's eyes, because you've got to be the one that's got to be the primary caregiver, and you've got to be the one to make that judgment call. But by the same token, she still needs to know her parents. But from what the way the judge seems bringing down their decision is the fact that they don't believe that they're fit parents to be able to even be given that title as parents. Do you know what I mean? Like they haven't never really put their daughter first, and that's a sad thing. So it's good now that I think that we're going to get some stability for your granddaughter, and that's probably part of the changes that I was picking up around the home too, that it's sort of like you needed this time to rest and gather your thoughts and put yourself first, because you're going to need an awful lot of energy to sort of answer the questions that your granddaughter's going to have and sort of help make her feel secure and happy. And, she's going to have waves of emotions that are going to be positive and negative and everything in between. So it's going to be an adjustment for everyone, isn't it?
Yeah, right now she's in CPS care, and I'm just wanting temporary custody until her parents get done doing their case plan. But she's in foster care, and I want her out of there, Oh,
I can fully understand
there.
Yeah, I can fully understand why you don't want her in foster care, and it's no disrespect to the foster care system, but of course children are always better off with, extended family members than they are with total strangers. There's no two ways about that. But I think your granddaughter's a very strong young child, and she will ask a lot of questions that sort of, you're a little bit taken back by, that where did that come from? All I can suggest to you is answer them as honestly as you can for her age group. Don't fob her off. She wouldn't ask the question if she wasn't ready to deal with the answer. You know, we don't have to give her all the details, but we can give her enough that will satisfy her age group. She's a smart young girl and she's going to do very well in her life, and a lot of that will be attributed to you and your wisdom and the way that you help shape her as a child into a young woman. So I think you should really give yourself a big pat on the back, Linda. You're doing an amazing job.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. So have a great week, and I wish you well with your lawsuit for your granddaughter. We're going to work now with Becky in Waukesha in Wisconsin, USA. Are you there, Becky?
Yes, I'm here.
How can I help you tonight, Becky? Do you have a question for me?
Mostly just looking for guidance. I guess I'm in a crossroads in my life, and a lot to do with situations with my two children and their father, and I just kind of look for things that might be positive or negative to watch out for in my future, and kind of have some hope, I guess, continue on.
It's always interesting, Becky, when we get to what's considered a crossroads in our lives that, you know, we sort of think that we have our lives mapped out and we're, you know, sailing along, connecting the dots. And then all of a sudden one day we wake up and say, oh, I'm questioning this and I'm questioning that. And why all of a sudden am I questioning things? But I feel that that's part of the journey of life too. And it also shows us that we're actually precisely on the right track. Because if we didn't question things and didn't sort of sit back and take a little bit of notice and say, is this right or is this wrong? I don't think we would achieve what we need to achieve as a soul this time on earth. So it's good that you're at this crossroads, even though it's unsettling in some ways. I think it's a positive shift of energy for you too, Becky.
Yeah,
I don't feel that you and the children's father are going to get back together as a couple. It's like that ship's already sailed. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I've always felt that in my heart, but it seems like we can't let go of each other, but I think we both know that it's not something that's ever going to really work.
No, and that's a hard thing because that usually indicates, Becky, it's a karmic relationship. You can't live with each other and you can't live without each other. And that sounds silly to an outsider, but it's the truth though. You know, you both know that it's not going to work, but yet you can't say goodbye to each other and move on. And that's because the karma hasn't been complete yet. But I feel we're almost at that point now where he's accepting that. You've certainly accepted a long time ago. And I think life will now start to move in different directions for the both of you. But I think you will always be, in my opinion, very closely connected for the children. Now, by that I mean as the children's parents, not as a close connection as a couple in love, but there as the two parents of the two children. And that's the important thing. I think it's been harder for you because you've been able to sense that he wasn't happy and wasn't able to move on and wasn't ready to let go. So you then second-guessed yourself and questioned yourself all the time. Am I making a mistake? Is this the right thing to do? Am I doing the wrong thing by the children? And then you'd come back to, but I'm not happy. This is not fulfilling me. I don't, sing through the day. So then it can't be right. And I feel that was part of this lesson this time with this relationship. You guys have done this at least 3 other lifetimes before this one. So it was like this time you had to really be very sure in your soul that this was it. There was to be no more, goes around the merry-go-round with this man, that, you were completely done. By early July, yeah. I feel that there's going to be sort of a real shift in energy for you. And it's like all of a sudden ideas are going to start flooding back into your head, Becky, about where to go, what to do next. And you'll have a plan again, which is good. And you'll start to sort of feel as if, right, I know exactly where I'm going now, what I need to achieve. Have you been studying or looking to go back to study to sort of enhance your career prospects, Becky?
Yeah, actually, I just went to an open house to go back to college, and I'm just waiting on actually my money to be able to pay off my debts from college last time, so I can go back.
Mm-hmm. Good, because I feel that that's the right direction for you, sort of back into something that's going to give you a purpose, a direction, and we're working towards that ultimate goal of a new career path, and that's good. So the children seem to be quite settled to me. I wasn't picking up anything there that I needed to alert you to. Yes, they're going to have their day-to-day issues, but I'm talking about anything of a serious nature that I need to, make you aware of. They seem to be very well adjusted emotionally, and that's attributed to both you and your former husband. You've both worked hard on making sure that they do feel, safe with both of you, and that's a good thing. Is there sort of a question mark around where you're living?
Yeah, I guess you'd say so. I'm always worried that we're going to have to move because it's just myself now, and it's a 3-bedroom townhouse. So I'm kind of always worried about moving or switching schools, things like that.
I don't feel that that's going to be a necessary thing. I think if and when you do decide to move, it's within your control. It's like your decision. You're not being forced to make that decision. It's like you just feel it's time. So that's a good thing, Becky.
Yeah, definitely. That relieves a lot, actually.
Yeah, so we're going to leave it there, Becky, but I know you're on the right path. Just keep up the great work, sweetheart, and just keep moving forward. You're really on the right path. So it was lovely to speak with Becky and everybody else on the show today. Until next week, I hope you have an absolutely sensational sort of week. And for those of you that want to know a little bit more about the Sun in Gemini, come and join me on Facebook Live. I'll be over on my page, Amanda Hall, in a couple of seconds after this show doing our little workshop there, our weekly workshop there. It's a very, very interesting time of the year because it is a time of the year where astrologically we are being stretched and pulled to all different directions and being asked to be true to ourselves. And I think that's the message I'd like to leave you with this week is, are you being true to yourself? Have you really put yourself first? Are you really looking after yourself in whatever way that may be? For some people, it might be starting a new exercise program or just de-stressing, reorganising your finances. Whatever it is, have a sensational week, and we'll do it all again in 7 days. Bye for now.